No, I had it on my calendar. I was talking to Boris. I totally spaced it. All right. Let's pull up some stuff here. There we go. Wonderful. All right. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we will get everything started. Awesome. We should be seeing a slide that says Daily Lunch and Learn.
Yep.
And I am good to go. So good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are in the world, everyone. Let me go ahead and get things kicked off here. My name is Eric Welmerink, and I will be leading today's Lunch and Learn. What the Lunch and Learn is it's a Monday through Thursday meeting that we offer that will put a decisions expert on a webinar to answer any and all questions you may have about decisions. So it's just the time to sit with an expert or someone at the company, and you can ask questions about how to accomplish, a task in decisions, how you would build something. Depending on who's on the call, you can ask, what their favorite color is. You can ask where to eat in Virginia Beach. Really, it's honestly just the time to sit and answer any and all questions you may have. A little bit about myself. My name is Eric Welmerink. I've been with Decisions for coming up on 9 years, actually. My 9-year anniversary is next month. And so I've done a little bit of everything over the years. I actually started writing code as a .NET developer and have transitioned through the company a little bit, doing support and professional services. I actually did all of our training for about 5 years and helped manage the documentation as part of that. But most recently, what I'm currently involved in is actually being product manager. So what I care about currently, what my entire job focus is making sure that Decisions is headed in the right direction, that we are building the features and the tools that impact our customers in the most, or to make them the most successful, that we're adding all the new things that will make us grow and be bigger and better, and really listening and partnering with those customers and partners to understand your needs and to ensure that we're developing them appropriately. So that's who I am. And that's a little bit of what I'm going to talk about. The way we do these Lunch and Learns is if you want to ask something, please feel free to post it in the webinar chat or in the question and answer panel. Those are both buttons on the Zoom bar. You can click to type your answer in. If you'd prefer to ask it verbally and you just want to chat with me and we can talk about it on the call, you can go to the participants panel and click the raise hand button, and we're happy to let you come off mute and we can talk about it that way as well. So go ahead and start thinking of your questions, thinking of all the things you want to ask here, all the stumpers you think you can get me with, and we will go ahead and get things kicked off. Now, if there is nothing to start, you have nothing that you immediately comes to mind that you want to ask about, what I'm happy to talk about a little bit is some of our product roadmap changes that we've been making over the past, that we have made over the past several, really the past several weeks. So there's some updates to the product roadmap, some new features and initiatives we're going to be putting out in the next 12 to 18 months that I would love to introduce and talk about. But again, this is open time. So if you want to interrupt me, you want to ask questions in the chat, I'll be here to listen to those as well. So I've stalled a little bit. I don't see any questions coming in just yet. I don't believe there were any pre-submitted questions either. So yeah, let's dive a little deep into the roadmap. I'm going to skip through this presentation a little bit to here. Actually, before I do this too much, I want to highlight what this presentation is. What I give is I give a product roadmap presentation every other week on Thursdays to anyone who wants to join. So sometimes it's internal employees, or sometimes it's a mix of customers and partners. Sometimes it's prospective customers who just want to learn more about what we're doing in the future. But it's every other week, it's a live presentation where I go through this roadmap, I talk about it, and I answer any questions you have. If you're interested in attending the full 1-hour roadmap presentation, you can come here and sign up under decisions.com/events, and you should see it somewhere. It's not here yet. Here we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Join us. There it is. I had to find it. There we go. Lead the automation. This is this event here. This webinar, Lead the Automation Revolution, is the roadmap presentation I give. So please feel free to sign up for that, or to let your coworkers or anyone else know that this is how you can attend that webinar. The next one we have will be after the holidays in January. So let me dive back here a little bit, and I'll just spend some time looking through this. If you have questions that you would like to ask about the roadmap specifically, or if you see something here that I don't mention that you would like to gather some more information on, please feel free to interrupt me and let me know. But I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing over the next little bit here. So let me first start with this quarter 4 of 2022, with our version 8.8 release, which is slated to be released today, I think, or maybe tomorrow. It might actually wind up being tomorrow or today, but it's in the next day or two, you're going to see the version 8.8 release, which has a bunch of really cool fixes in it. So everything that's currently black text in quarter 4 of 2022 is actually going to switch to green, except for Project View, which I'll talk about in a minute. So some things we're adding in 8.8, which I think are really great enhancements, is things like system alerting for late or delayed scheduled jobs. Currently in the platform, there's no great way to understand if you have a scheduled process that is delayed. Either there's something in front of it that's hasn't let it kick off, or you have a bunch of other work in your threads that are preventing your scheduled jobs from running appropriately. Right now, there's no really great way to understand if a job is late, when it was supposed to run, how long it's delayed. So we've added some automated alerting for all of your system administrators, as well as some better reporting on the scheduled jobs section of decisions, so you can see the kind of your scheduled job run history and run statistics. So that's getting added in 8.8. We've added the ability to write all of your logs to SQL or Postgres. So all of the logs that get produced in decisions, either everything from debug logs to understand how things are working, all the way down to error or fatal logs if a process breaks or a step throws an error. All of that can be written now a number of different ways. It can be written to the file system like it has been traditionally. You can push it to cloud services like Azure Analytics, or I forget what the AWS ones, but you could write your logs to the kind of cloud service. Now we can actually write them to databases. So you can take your logs and actually commit them to either a SQL or a Postgres database. And lastly, we are now allowing for Azure Service Principals, which is kind of an authorization mechanism offered by Azure cloud-based services to allow decisions to install using that authentication method. So this is kind of the way, it's kind of a flavor of OAuth that Azure is offering, that they're recommending a lot of their apps and a lot of their cloud-based users use for authentication. And so we now support it as a authentication to our databases from decisions. And then lastly, some cool things at the bottom here. The mobile portal. So this is if you take your phone and you try to log into decisions from the mobile browser, from like a Chrome or a Safari. That mobile portal has been completely redesigned and rewritten with a bunch of updated UI and modernization to it. So it makes the mobile portal significantly more usable, significantly more user-friendly. And we're actually going to continue to iterate on that a little bit as well as we look to kind of next year and understanding the use cases of where our customers are trying to get mobile access and what sort of activities they're trying to do. And then probably my favorite feature that should have been added 10 years ago when I got hired, but is now finally getting added to the tool, I'm very excited about, is subflow refactoring. Really what this is imagine you have a very large workflow with 30 steps. And this is a common developer practice. You build and you build and you build, and then you take a step back and you realize, well, wait a minute, I kind of want to break out these 10 steps to their own flow, or maybe I see repeating logic that I'm doing over and over, and I really want to make it a reusable piece, like its own subflow. Currently, to do that, that's a series of clicks and templates and copying and pasting, and it never quite works right. So what we've added is the ability to highlight a group of steps and say create subflow from this group of steps. And what it will do is it will take your grouping, it will automatically push them to a subflow, it will add the inputs and outputs of those steps to the start and end step, and then it will replace in your parent flow whatever grouping of steps with one subflow call. So it's a way to very quickly take logic and break it out into smaller subpieces with a single button click rather than a kind of crazy workaround. So it's a great tool for long flow, or really big flows, or even flows you've had for a long time that you want to go back and refactor. So I'm very excited about it. And the last two things you'll see in 8.8, process mining, hot and cold data. So this is better visualization on our process mining tool that allows you to see the difference between data that's live and actively running and data that may be more complete or cold or archived due to those sort of data. So the way we visualize, ingest, and show that data, you're going to have some better tools on the process mining side to visually click through that very quickly to see the difference between live, active, hot data and cold data. And then our sampling mode finally is getting improved for the debugger. So when you debug a flow and you have thousands of executions, or maybe a loop, like a for each loop that's going through a large number of iterations, the way we currently do it is you have to either profile the whole thing, which will show that step running 10,000 times and could impact performance of the debugger, or we do a sample, which is just top 3, and it kind of is confusing about what happens there. So we've improved the way sampling works to actually give you a representation of the iterations through of debugging large flows with large iterations and those sorts of things. We're going to continue to do some debugger stuff. You'll see in Q2, actually, if you glance ahead a little bit, we're going to be continuing to improve some debugger capabilities as well. Now, alongside these, there's a number of some, enhancements and improvements in organization that aren't kind of categorized here. This list very specifically are major initiatives we undertook to kind of enhance existing features or add brand new ones, like writing our logs to servers, that sort of things. So that's Q4, and thankfully we actually were able to get all of those done. And once we release version 8, everything on my slide is going to turn green, and I'm going to be very happy, very happy. So cool. No questions yet, so you just get to listen to me continue to ramble on. Let's look a little bit at next year. I'm not going to go there. There's a ton of these R&D initiatives. I'm not going to go through every single individual one. Some of these are aggregates of other features. Some of these are really tied together. So I'm not going to detail dive. That would take several hours. But I want to highlight a couple of really big initiatives and things that you can look forward to in the coming year for decisions. And I'm going to start with what you see at the top of Q1 as 145 and 146, Project View and Deployment Server. Project View is going to be a complete revisualization of how users enter into a development experience of decisions and start to build work or workflows as part of a process. What we're going to do is we're going to enforce this concept that all of your work really belongs to a bigger idea called a project. And so we're going to organize, instead of having a massive folder tree that's kind of disorganized and chaotic, we're going to organize everything into buckets or into pieces of work called projects. By doing that, we're constraining a little bit of where users go to start building their work, but you're going to get a bunch of additional ancillary benefits to that as well, such as having really clear understanding of what flows and forms and pieces you can use inside of a project, so that when you go to, say, call a subflow, you're not just seeing a folder tree of every other flow in the system and hope that you pick the right one. You're only going to see a list of things in that project that are tied directly to the implementation of that project. Same for like picking data types. Once everything's all together in a project, we can gather some statistics and better visualization and reporting on just the stuff that's in that project. And then that directly impacts the initiative 146 above it, deploying that work. So currently called the repository. The repository is our way of moving work from one decisions environment to another. So if you have multiple environments, one for development, one for testing, one for your actively running production workflows, right now to move things from one to another, you can manually import and export them, or you can use what we call the repository to check in and check out work. But it's very user driven. It's very manual intervention type work, and really not representative of an automation platform like we are at Decision. So we completely redesigned the repository from the ground up and decided to change paradigms a little bit to be more of a deployment mechanism rather than a kind of just a source control check in, check out mechanism. And so what this has allowed us to do is to take those buckets of work, those projects now that you're going to build in, and allow them to very easily move things from one server to another. The deployment concept now will be, as users are committing their work to the deployment server and it's getting reviewed, and that's part of the automated process. Now you can just bundle that work together, and from a single button click from the deployment server, push it to all the connected servers. You can say deploy version 6 of my project to the QA server, and all of that should be automated. The results of unit tests should come back quickly. The reports of that should be updated, and everyone should be really clear about all the connected servers, what version of the project they're on, how to deploy them, and how to connect all the work together. So it's a large rework there. And like I said, it's a complete rewrite of what we are currently doing with the repository. Now, I'm going to pause from this slide for a minute so we're not getting too bored and jump down to some screenshots to kind of give you a better idea of what I'm talking about here. So consider this. When you go to decisions, when you go log into a development server, you'll first be presented with a bunch of tiles, which are all of the projects that you can connect to. And you'll enter into one of those projects and you'd see a dashboard similar to this now. Now that we know what's constrained inside of a project, we can see some things like a project health. We can calculate from all of your flows and rules and forms which ones have validation issues or which ones don't have any error handling capabilities tied to them. We also can click through these tabs on the left and start to see what the differences is between my environment and the deposit or the deployment server and what's up there. I can get really quick filtering and reporting on what stuff exists inside of a project, and I can flip through those filters very easily. I can see which of my items have issues or are throwing validation messages. And we're even adding some really cool new feature called to-dos, which allows you to really add a comment or a tag to anything inside the project. So any flow, any rule, or even any flow step, and allow that to be shown here as kind of documentation for your project, as well as have that be notifying users of any work or things they need to do. So for example, if I'm on a flow step and I can't get it to work, I can tag another developer, tag, hey, at Heath, I can't get this step to work. Can you please take a look at it? Go. He'll see it pop up in his to-do list with a link to go straight to that step of where I took the note. So that's something we're going to be adding to the part of Project View as well. So there's a ton of stuff here. I could probably spend an hour just talking about Project View. Some things like setting up settings and permissions for Project View. Oh, that's the deployment server, sorry. Setting up settings and permissions for the Project View, being able to tie two projects together so you can use resources out of one or the other. There's quite a bit of stuff going on there. So this is what Project View really entails, is reorganizing all of your work from a kind of disconnected folder tree into one consistent project experience. And I did have a question come in. Do you have a plan of developing some mechanism that allow to convert decisions objects into code? Interesting question. Currently, no, but not directly to code. What we are developing is a better comparison utility, which will give you a JSON-based, it'll give you a JSON-based representation of a flow rather than kind of the XML serialization that you have in the dict object. So in the new compare utility, and it's actually, look, I can prove that we're talking about this. It's actually going to be part of, is it quarter two? Must be quarter two. Oh, it's on here somewhere, I swear. Maybe quarter three. No, it's right here, quarter one. All right, cool. Rule and flow compare utility. Saw it. What this is you can take any flow, or file, any deck object, or any rule, and push it into the compare utility. You can send two of those objects and have it visually compare the differences and textually compare the differences in a JSON format, or you can send one object and just get the representation of it. And so what it is it's going to give you a JSON format that has like the step name, the mapping type, the currently mapped item to there. And then if you have two of them, you can compare it. So now you can have a textual based compare for two objects that says, hey, your flow was using a constant, and now it's using a select value and it's using this other thing. So that's something we're developing. We don't really have it to convert to code. It's an interesting idea I'll throw on the roadmap, but yeah, that's currently how we'll be solving this. Good question though. All right. Cool. So carrying on, I had some more slides for deployment server. Yeah, deployment server, the big thing you're going to see with deployment server is a lot of revisualization and dashboarding so that you can really clearly see how your stuff is deployed, what servers are connected, what the status is. So you're going to see some updated UI, a lot of updated UI here to really understand better how your projects are sent, what they're doing, what the deployment is, etc. All right, very cool. No more questions. All right, let me dive back into the roadmap very quick. And again, let me just go ahead and highlight a number of really cool things. All right, sorry, closing a quick message, apologies. So let's look at a couple other things. So those are the big things for quarter 1. You're actually going to see a lot of these enhancements too moving forward throughout the rest of the year. But for the rest of the year, after Project View and Deployment Server, we're going to be focusing quite a bit on designer experience and really cleaning up some old UIs and some older features that really just need some love and need some modernization and updates. So some things you'll see here as well. Like quarter 1 is really heavily focused on Project View. Everything else you see in quarter 1 is really tied to Project View, like updating the step library documentation. So in your workflows, that's going to be a better experience developing. Performance optimization and system administration. If we're going to tie everything to project, we're going to update all of the kind of system admin tools to understand project health, understand project utilization, to understand server performance, like CPU utilization and RAM. And so now that we can tie things to project, we're going to have a better understanding over there as well. And that's going to be all of quarter 1. Now, quarter 2, what you can look at in quarter 2 is a lot of improvements to now some of those design experiences. So for example, we're going to be updating the debugger with some more capabilities in quarter 2 as well, like being able to go in and test significantly larger flows, being able to put proper breakpoints. If you're familiar with code development, breakpoints are when you're testing a piece of code or a piece of work, you can actually pause it at a certain moment and then wait for the user to actually click continue for the process to continue running. So we're going to add breakpoints. We're going to add the ability to watch specific variables so that you can track data consistently and map it across your workflows and see all the points that it gets transformed or massaged or changed. And then lastly, just general performance. The debugger is going to get a UI and performance update as well. And then something I'm really excited about for the middle of next year is really kind of down tucked in the middle here, called easier data type switching. Easier data type switching is going to be the ability to change attributes of your data structures without having to create new ones and go remap them across your process. So the way it works currently is if you choose a database structure, and that's a structure you define and create, and it's created in decisions, and you choose that you want that to be stored in our database. But then you develop, and 3 months later, you say, well, wait a minute, I actually want it to live in the portal so I can leverage the folder tree and some permissioning there and some of the decisions metadata. You want more capability on your structure. Today, you'd have to create the new structure and go find the places where you're using the old structure and remap them or select the new structure, which could be potentially onerous and potential errors of failure or points of failure too, where you can say, hey, I forgot to change this one report to the new structure and now the report's not updating. So we're going to allow you to switch data types, where you can actually say, it really is switch attributes of data types. You can say, I created a database structure, but now I want it to be an entity. I want it to live in the folder. So you'll just now check the checkbox that says also lives in decisions folder tree and click save. And you don't have to go remap it everywhere. And all of that new capability will just be added to your existing structures. So data type switching is going to be really, really cool and allows you to be much more flexible with your data type generation and creation when you're building your processes. Really cool thing. There's so much stuff to talk about. I don't want to waste too much time here. I don't see any other questions, so I'll keep going for a little bit. But some other things here, quarter 2 is like the flow designer refresh. We're going to be updating 2 things about the flow designer, and I want to talk about to convert to subflow. That's actually got moved up. That's the one that's getting released this version, so you can ignore this slide. But we're going to update iconography. We're going to update the toolbox drastically, the way you search through it, the way we do intelligent searching for steps, the way it's organized. You can kind of see in the screenshot, might be a little small, the tabs at the very top of the toolbox to help you filter and organize your steps. But really importantly too, along with just iconography changes, is the way we visualize and map data across your steps. So currently we do have a data explorer, but it creates really big kind of arrows for you to go through and find all the steps and things that need to get that are using a piece of data. Now we're going to be drawing much more visually pleasing lines, much more clear representations of how the data is being sent from one step to another. You can see all the different variables that occur there. You can see all the different points that it's changed without having to go into the debugger. So you actually can visualize that data in your design experience and even map data from here as well. So you can actually say, well, my step that I've highlighted needs a variable from this previous step. So you can just drag an arrow over there and pick the variable because you know it's coming from that one step. So it's going to be a new way to map data in a much more visually pleasing way. With the Flow Designer refresh, we'll be adding to-do steps. I mentioned this with the project view. So you can actually go into any step, create a to-do, add some new ones, or go complete to-dos. And then eventually, this isn't really Flow Designer, but eventually we're going to be adding theme editing for project view as well. But that's a little deeper in the weeds than I wanted to go, so we'll pause there. So that's going to be Q2. So by the middle of next year, we're going to have project view, deployment server, some updates to the user experience like Flow Designer, updates to the way you build and design data structures, and just general improvements overall, improvements to debugger, improvements to case entities, improvements to the way you write queries. You're going to get a good uplift from there. All right, last couple things I'll talk about then is looking a little further. Now, as I hit this slide, this is where the roadmap tends to be a little more fluid, a little bit more organic. So a lot of these items will slide up and down based on customer request or need or prioritization tactics that we employ over here. But just some initiatives that you can look forward to, and you can see kind of where we're thinking of going here is starting quarter, towards this latter half of next year, we're going to be looking at some things that really help kind of the bigger picture of projects move forward. So for example, like the auditing rewrite, the way that we audit data now is really just shove a bunch of data into tables. But we want a better mechanism for people to understand how their projects are getting utilized, how they're getting modified, what data is getting sent through there, how do you audit all of that information. So it's targeting rules specifically, but this definitely will impact some other areas. We're going to be undergoing an audit, kind of an audit, where we're going to look at all of our audit capabilities and say, what do we need to do to make them better? I know there's a lot of customers currently who are very excited about understanding like rule authoring audit information. So you can say, hey, user X went into my truth table and changed this type of rule verb from a contains to an equals, and it impacted these rows of data. That's a common ask, is that people who especially are in like financial industry want to understand how their rules have been modifying and then what the impact is to their data. And so we're going to be looking at that middle of next year, towards the end of next year, about some things there. We also see some other just things that we're targeting and looking forward to, like the rule set redesign in Q4. How do we take rule sets and really make them more usable and more implementable as part of your projects? So rule sets are a great way to take like-minded rules, package them together, and implement them as part of a process. But there's a lot of UI there that can use some updates and some cleaning up and really some ease of use for customers. We find that a lot of customers don't use rule sets because of the additional work needed to set them up and create them outside of your flow and then go add them back to the flow. People find it easier to just create rules where they are. So we're going to do some redesign there to consider how to make rule sets a better ease of use and a better UI experience for our users. And the last couple of things I'll highlight, looking kind of further in the year, getting summarizations of data out of decisions. If you look at beginning of 2024, this is something we've had a couple asks come in for that we're looking at. Where if you wanted to print or get data out of a case and understand just a really clean summary of what has happened in a case, we currently don't have a good way to do that without writing a bunch of custom reports and doing a bunch of work there. So what we're going to be doing is adding better ability to extract data out of decisions, specifically around case entities. But also that brings another interesting point where people want to understand how to get data out of their own custom dashboards, and how do we print or get summarizations of your custom reports and your custom pages out of decisions. So we're going to be adding some capability there as well. And then probably like if you're looking big picture type stuff, aside from some of these things, something we're exploring doing, if you look at the middle of 2024, so we're talking 18 months out, is the way we have our data stored and organized. And this is part of a bigger understanding of our backend database, our backend relational database, is how do we have data stored into the tables? How is that segregated? Is there an opportunity here to have reporting data separate from data that customers want to access, like as a read-only connection? So this comes up from a current use case with one of our customers where they really want to understand or really want to query our database and say, hey, we have transactional live case data that we also want to query from another system. But now you're putting a bunch of load on our backend database, which we rely on heavily to run. And so is there an opportunity here to, as you're creating structures and storing data, to kind of split data or replicate data or have read-only access to tables or use third-party integrations to store the data in other systems, but we still use it transactionally? We don't know. The answer is there's some interesting performance improvements here as we evaluate whether or not we want to do something like that. And even further into the future, do we want to add additional capabilities around not just having like a relational SQL backend, but even potentially like a NoSQL storage or a Mongo or something like that? So that's some far thinking, far future thinking that we are constantly evaluating. All right, I'm gonna go through this slide and I'm gonna pause for questions. So if there's no questions, we can wrap things up and celebrate Christmas early, I guess. But last thing I just want to mention here is kind of the long-term vision and some bigger ideas as we look into things like 2024 and 2025. Like, what are some of the bigger ideas around what we want to do as decisions, not just kind of feature sets, but kind of as a tool? And really, there's a couple of key things to point out here. Next year is all going to be project view and deployment server, as well as kind of designer experience refreshes. That's kind of the theme of what next year will be about: organizing your work, getting it to be deployed consistently with confidence, updating and modernizing the UI for developers and designers, and really getting decisions to be, that top-notch, top-of-the-line tool that we know it is. After that, we're going to continue to improve performance and scale. So things like front-end React adoption, we've been going through a front-end React adoption for the past 2 years and continuing into this year, next year. But really, we're converting the entire front-end portal, everything you experience and interact with, to React technology. React is faster, it's more performant, it's more responsive, but it requires some work on our end to make sure it communicates well with our backend. And so because of that, we're going to continue that adoption and complete it ideally by 2024, which allows things like the note below it, client-side execution. If we're built in React, we actually can deploy with that React technology things that the user experiences actually run on your client. They actually run on the browser that you are running decisions on. And so that allows things like visualizations and visibility, rules, and all the things that kind of trigger or impact your UI. We can actually just run on your browser, which improves the load that we are putting on the back end and the bandwidth communication from back end to front end. So it's we're going to continue to look at that so that we can just make decisions perform better. And then lastly here, process mining. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we're continuing to put process mining more and more closely integrated with decisions. So some things you're going to see here are like the ways that you access and get to your process mining statistics will become more closely integrated with your flows and rules. The way that you the way that you inform decisions workflows of process mining insights is going to continue to get improved. So we're going to be using process mining capabilities to help inform and build designs and to help kind of keep our two systems growing closer and closer together. And then lastly, built-in machine learning models for rules. I think this is awesome. We're going to look at machine learning tactics and techniques potentially with process mining as well to say, hey, you're building this rule. We have production level statistics. We have learnings that we've had. Let's just apply some machine learning models to your rule authoring or your flow authoring for recommendations. So if you say, hey, this is a compliance rule and need it to pass 95% of the time, we can give you suggestions for authoring and say, hey, given production data and recent statistics, you can apply XYZ patterns to make your rule evaluate this way. So we're going to be looking at, in the far-reaching future, can we use things like machine learning and AI to help developers and to help design better systems? And then lastly, far in the future, again, I mentioned the NoSQL data storage. Is that something we want to pursue? Potentially, yes. As well as things like automated decisions updates and proper SaaS offerings and those sorts of things where you can actually subscribe decisions to just be automatically updated. So your users log in and you're just on the latest version. You'll get a release notes in the portal pop up that says, "Hey, here's the new stuff," and really make a cleaner upgrade and automated update experience. So that is some far-reaching features. And I did get a question come in. Let me go ahead and read it. It says ChatGPT. Oh, don't get me started on ChatGPT. I love ChatGPT. I've wasted many hours asking it really mundane, silly questions. But anyway, let me carry on with the question. Sorry. ChatGPT is capable of writing code based on requirements. Yeah, totally. Would be cool to train it to create flows and decisions based on requests. Yes. Okay. Very, very cool. This isn't formally on the roadmap yet because I guess specifically ChatGPT is so new, but we have been looking at given the kind of explosion of what ChatGPT is capable of, what does that look like for workflow authoring? What does that look like for user interactions with systems? What does that look like for form fill out kind of capabilities? What does that look like to have some sort of AI actually run processes on the behalf of users at their request? And so all of that is in discussion. And so I love your idea here. Yeah, it would be really cool to train it to write flows. And that may be something, specifically we're looking at in the next couple of years about, hey, how do we leverage these really cool techniques of AI to build a workflow? One example, this is from our sales team. They said it'd be really cool if you just talk to the AI, even type it out, whatever, and said, "Hey, I need a workflow process that's going to consume these 6 fields. It's going to have the user fill them out on a form. It will then need to go to the manager for approval. It will then need to email the CEO this result, and then it needs to, submit my data back out," and just have that create a workflow skeleton. Obviously you may need to go in and do some mapping and testing and those sorts of things. But yeah, that's I love the suggestion because that's in line with conversations we've just started having here. So I don't have a good answer for you as far as formally on the roadmap or what, whether we commit to doing it or not. But I will say that given the kind of new capabilities of AI and kind of the new kind of things coming out, we're absolutely looking at that. We want to make sure we're on top of it. So thank you for your suggestion. I love it. And like I said, I wasted so much time on ChatGPT asking it. So I actually had it write a requirements document once and see if my boss would notice. He did, but it was still kind of fun. Essentially, I'm going to automate myself out of a job. So one day. All right, cool. What other questions do you have? We're right about 12:40. I could keep going on roadmap stuff, but I won't bore this call too much. If you want to dive deeper, like there's a ton of R&Ds I didn't get to. I don't really talk about the strategy or the status of where we are with some of these initiatives. If you want to attend that broader presentation, please feel free to sign up on the webinar or for the webinar, and I'm more than happy to talk about it with you guys. But for now, let me see if there's any other questions. Otherwise, we can wrap things up. No hands raised. I see a couple familiar faces. All right, going once, going twice. Cool. Thank you for attending. Really appreciate it. If you guys do have any more questions, I don't believe we have a lunch and learn tomorrow, or we do have one tomorrow. Okay. No, not tomorrow.
We have one tomorrow, but we are canceling next week.
Next week. That's the note. Thank you so much. Yes. So yes, one last lunch and learn tomorrow. Next week, we'll be off, hopefully enjoying the holidays. So hopefully everyone here gets to enjoy hopefully some time off and some rest, and to come back in the new year with some grand ideas. But we'll be back that first week of January with the lunch and learns. Otherwise, yeah, hope you all take care. Have a great weekend. Merry Christmas to you all, and please let me know if I can help or answer any of your questions. So yep, take care everyone. Have a good one.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Eric.